What is going on, everyone? Welcome back to yet another episode of the PhysioSchool Podcast. My name is Reed Vandervluten, and I am joined by my savvy co-host, Anthony Pinto da Costa. How's it going today, buddy?
Yeah, it's going well as usual, but I gotta say, Christmas holiday season has just been taking me by storm recently, especially today. Had two Krispy Kreme donuts, Ferrero Rochers, a bunch of other holiday treats, and I'm feeling a little lethargic right now. But other than that, I'm doing okay, man. I'm doing okay.
Were these clinic treats or at home treats? Because I can resonate with the clinic treats. I've been crushing Timbits and donuts like no one's business these last couple days.
Even worse, man. These were hospital treats.
Oh gosh.
You know
Wow.
how it is. You know how it is.
I know how it is. Well, hey, I'm not worried about you. I know your regime is it's tight. So, you know what? Enjoy these 2 weeks and then get back on the saddle for 2022, right?
I'm gonna have to, man. I'm gonna have to.
Awesome. Well, let's jump into our episode today. Our guest, we've been really excited to bring this individual on. The guest for this episode is originally from Hamilton, Ontario, but moved to Okotoks, Alberta early in his life. He's a massive Hamilton Tiger Cats fan, Formula One fan, and gets way too upset over Toronto Raptors Game 7 losses. He's held many position titles in his lifetime, from chicken farm employee to lifeguard to construction worker to physio assistant. But regardless, it doesn't matter where he's been, but where he is at right now, which is at the University of Alberta as a first-year physio student. So without further ado, Jon Young, how we doing today, buddy?
half year physio student. I'm doing awesome. I'm really excited to be here. So no, we're
Nice.
good. We're good. We're enjoying our time off right now. We're doing a whole lot of nothing. The exercise regime has not fully rebooted yet, but that's okay. We all have to have goals.
You on the same diet as Anthony right now?
Well, coming out of my 1 week placement at the Rocky View Hospital, I am. Yeah, it's amazing. Every office you walk into, it's like people drop off stuff to every office in the hospital. There's Ferrero Rochers in every single office. There's donuts. It's candies. You gotta watch yourself. The slippery slope.
That's enough of a reason to get into physio for anyone, in my opinion.
Well, private practice has the same amount of goodies too. It's not much different. So
That's very true. Well, like as we were saying, we were really excited to get you on the pod because you have a really interesting path to get to physio school. So we just want to start off really simply with the first question, just being, how did you first become interested in physio? And just take it away.
well, I'm glad you think so. We'll see. The viewers will be the judge
of that.
So yeah. So for me, getting into physio, there was two main sort of events in my life that I sort of attribute to pushing me in that direction, but there was a lot of stuff. I think little things that you don't pick up on, but the big main one was, and I know we've had this discussion before, Reed, so you've heard this before, but was my papa, and Anthony, you know of him as well too, but he was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis when he was 25, and I believe he passed away in his mid 70s. So he battled MS for a long time. I witnessed sort of the full regression. I mean, I mostly remember him with a cane, but then I remembered the walker, the wheelchair, and everything else kind of in between. So I was fortunate enough, way before even having physio, school wasn't even on my radar, actually, at this point in my life. I was never going to go to school. But I just got to work with him a little bit. I loved exercise. I loved movement. So I kind of just tried to assist him at the time. Like you had said, I was lifeguarding. I had the opportunity I took one of my breaks lifeguarding when they were out. They were out on the East Coast for most of my life, out in Sackville, New Brunswick. And this was when we had moved out to Okotoks, Alberta, which is just south of Calgary from Stony Creek. But for those of you who don't know Stony Creek, because it's small, it's Hamilton. And I had the opportunity to take him swimming at this point. He was fully in a wheelchair. He could ambulate a little bit with the four-wheel walker, but mostly using 4-point to get around. And so I got to get him into the pool, get him swimming. I knew so much about the water. I was a lifeguard for close to 10 years. I taught swimming lessons the whole time. I was actually fortunate enough to teach aqua fitness classes as well too, but that's another story. And I got him in the water, and at this point, his right side was the most affected side, and it was almost completely immobile, I guess, for lack of a better word. But getting him in the water, just the different properties of the water help to reduce the amount of load that you have to support. Takes a little bit of the gravity away. So I was able to get him to walk through the water, and I hadn't seen my grandpa walk in years at that point. I had him in a life jacket on his back. We had him swimming around, and even using the right side, which was mostly dead weight at this point. And it was cool for me, but the cooler part was sort of seeing the effect that it had, especially on my mom and my Omi. This was just my grandma. That's another long story. My brother couldn't pronounce grandma, so anyways, Omi was what she got bestowed with, and she had it rough for a while too. Like, you two know, I'm sure you guys have worked with MS patients over the years, and for people who have had experience with it, like it's a rough go, and it's a pretty nasty decline. And so she had been taking care of him, right, going from being the man that takes care of you to now she's taking care of him again. And we were in the water together, and she's smiling so big, and she's having fun, and she's laughing, and you didn't see that from her a lot of the time because she just was so busy with taking care of him and everything else. And then my mom was on the side of the pool at the time, and I remember looking over to her, and she's crying on the side of the pool, and I'm just like, whoa, like this is big, like this is, substantial for people to get back to moving and seeing people that they love get moving again. And that was sort of the original sort of fire that lit up in me. But again, I wasn't really in a point in my life that I was ever going to pursue anything like that. This was kind of a checkpoint in my life that was like, wow, that was cool. So fast forward a few years, lifeguarding wasn't really the place for me anymore. So I got into road construction, which you had alluded to earlier. So I was running heavy equipment, mostly like skid steers or bobcats, for most people know them as, and a little bit of excavator and bulldozers or whatever, just anything I needed to run into, they threw me in and taught me how to run it. So, but at the time too, I was super, super cool. And I was learning how to do some gymnastics with some friends. We would always do these drop-in gymnastic nights. And so I was teaching myself how to backflip, which I would highly discourage people from doing. At least go and get advice from people who know how to do backflips before you start trying to learn how to do them. So, but I could do it. I was like this, I thought I was cool. I could do standing backflips and stuff. So I was doing that, and I was doing it an improper form. I got a lot of the rotational speed from extending my spine when you're supposed to throw your arms and tuck your legs. And if anyone who's a gymnast or knows anything about aerials or gymnastics, you know that that's the case. So I ended up hurting my back really, really bad. I remember the day that it happened quite vividly. Actually, I was working at the Calgary airport. We were tying in the new arrivals ramp to the new terminal that they were building. And I was having a real rotten day, and I was running this, what's called a double steel drum packer. So it's two giant steel drums, and it vibrates and it packs the dirt. Anyways, I was upset, and I was driving it really fast around the site, and it's bucking. It's like if you've ever ridden one of those bowls at the bar, like you roll over grass and you feel every blade of grass while you're riding across this thing. And so I kind of just beat myself up this day. And the next day I woke up, and I couldn't get out of bed. I couldn't stand up, couldn't roll out of bed. And it was really scary, actually. It was one of the scarier moments in my life because I could hardly even walk for a couple of days. And I remember my mom, I'm crying. It's the end of the world for me because I've never experienced anything like this before. So she drags me to a physio clinic at the rec center. And I get the needles, and I get the heat, and she gives me some exercises, and I'm listening to Reed's story actually too. I guess I was kind of that similar client. I went about maybe 4 or 5 times, and then I was like, I know what I'm doing here. I like the exercises. Things are getting better. I'm just going to stick with it and run with it. And so at this time, I couldn't do the construction anymore. So I ended up backing out of that. And this is when I started to think about going back to school. So I was working at Walmart, doing some upgrades and rehabbing myself, and it went really well. It took me about a year to get back to, I would say, almost 100%. And then within a year and a half, I had like come back to the gym, and I was also lifeguarding at the time at the Talisman Center, which is the Repsol Center now in Calgary. And I ended up breaking all my PRs, and I got myself back to lifting again. So I thought this was really cool. I enjoyed the process. I think that I could maybe be good at this. So then that was when I looked at going back to school. But that kind of is into another story. So I'll just leave it at that. And then the final thing that sealed the deal for me would be my working at Momentum. So, and you were a part of a lot of this. But I prepping for physio school. I went to Mount Royal University, which was fortunate enough to push practicums on people pretty heavily, which at the time I didn't realize was as valuable as it was, but I feel like I also took it pretty seriously. So I was fortunate to have done that. So I ended up finding out that there was a physio that went to my brother's church, and a friend of his had done a placement there and had worked there for a few years. So I said, hey, like I have to do this 52-hour practicum. Chris, who's my brother, would you mind talking to this guy and seeing if he'd be willing to take on a student for the summer for this practicum? And so he did, and he ended up saying yes. Who I know, this man now. He's your boss, and I guess he's still kind of my boss. My name's still up on the wall. I've only worked one shift in the last 4 months, but
that's how much we like you here.
Yeah, he's something, I don't know. Yeah, not sure what it is, but so he blindly said yes, and we still have a running joke about this because he had no idea. He just maybe probably too nice of a guy, but without having met me, agreed to take me on for the 52 hours. So I did the 52 hours that summer, and I just had a blast. I was mainly doing modalities, so heat, ice, e-stim, and I just fell in love with the space. It was a really, really cool area. I got to just chat with people and build relationships, which is something that I've always prided myself in and I enjoyed doing, which is another thing that sort of led me towards physio as well. And then at the end of the summer, he ended up asking me to go full time. At this point, I was getting close to the end of the program at Mount Royal, and I actually just got hired at the gym at Mount Royal. And so I had to kind of make this decision as to whether or not I would work and school in the same building, which would be really convenient, or I would commute to Okotoks for this PTA job. And I was living in Calgary at the time. So I would be commuting to school and to work with my house sort of in the middle. And that's ended up being the decision that I made, and honestly never looked back. It was the right decision. It was a lot of commuting, but so those are kind of the three things that really, really like honed me in on wanting to get into physio.
Yeah, I love that. I love that story, especially those first two stories about, having firsthand experience, personally, and also with a family member going through the whole rehabilitation journey. Because I think something like that, it's a very compelling reason to choose a career, which I think is great because it's showing that you're making an informed career choice. And I think in the future as well, that's going to make you a better physio as well, because you know what it's like, right? So when a patient comes and sees you, you're going to understand the process that they're going through right now, right? They're not just coming to you because they're in pain, right? Or they can't do a specific thing. They're coming to you because they're actually concerned about their well-being and how they're going to function throughout life. So the fact that you have those experiences is just going to serve you well in the future. So I really like those stories. Given that, so I wanted to ask you, what was your specific path to physio school like? Like, what were some of the other different jobs you had? I know Reed mentioned some of them. Some of the other experiences, maybe even some turning points that you had that really put you on that path to physio.
So this is like, I'll rewind a bit because this isn't really this isn't as much as sort of what directed me to it, but I think that it's just an important part of the story for me anyways. And I mean, I hope for other people as well too. But so I was never a good student. At least I would tell myself that growing up. I always did. I did okay, right? Before I moved to Alberta, I was like, like 70, 80s student. I was never pulling 90s, but I was, passing classes, and I never really would say that I tried too hard. We moved out to Alberta because my dad got a job offer out here. And so I wasn't too happy about that. And my attitude and everything else kind of just went down the toilet when we moved out here. I was really angry with everything. I didn't want to be out here. I moved grade 6 to 7, which I thought was a pretty nasty grade to move on. You start kind of, you think you're making your forever friends and stuff like that. We were just at that time going into like junior high. So it was kind of making that shift during that school shift. I was then starting in a new school, knowing nobody. So that didn't go well. And I kind of slowly did worse and worse and worse in school. Ended up getting into some trouble. Like I got into drugs at a younger age, mostly just smoking weed and stuff like that. But regardless, it was, went down the wrong path, hanging out with the wrong people, got caught with some stuff at school that you're not supposed to have at school, and ended up getting suspended for that. And my mom wanted me out of the school at that point. So I ended up doing homeschooling. Well, we attempted homeschooling for a year anyways, which went even worse than the schooling prior to that. And to this day, I actually never passed grade 9. So I actually dug through a box the other day and pulled out my report card from grade 9. And it's 40s and 50s in all these classes, like science. I think I had a 40 in it. And somehow we went to the Foothills Comp in Okotoks. My mom begged them and said, look at his other grades. Here's all his other report cards. We tried this online schooling last year and it just blew up in our face. He's a really good kid. You gotta take him. And they did. So they took me in. I don't know what the legality around that is, but just never got my grade 9, I guess. Maybe one day I'll have to go back and make up for that. I probably wouldn't even be able to pass the grade 9 curriculum at this point now. But so I ended up in high school. High school again, not good. Partied too much, skipped a lot of school. There's always this running joke with my mom, but I think it was my last semester in grade 12. I had 186 unexcused absences, and they just never called. So I just never went to school, and they never called. And so the reason why I like to tell this story, and I tell people this story, especially when I meet kids in clinic and stuff like that, is because it cost me a lot of money to make the decision. And so if anyone's listening to this, and usually it's a little bit older age, I would imagine, but do it right the first time. Even if you don't think you're going to go to university, which I never did. I was always going to do construction or welding or something like that. And there's nothing wrong with those jobs, but that's just where I was headed. So those other experiences that I had just talked to you about came up, and I decided that, hey, I wanted to pursue something more, and I thought that I could be better than I was. And I just didn't want to wake up at 5 a.m. to smell diesel fumes at 6 for the rest of my life. Was another kind of a big deciding factor for me. So I ended up having to upgrade everything. English, social, I didn't have to. So let's say everything. So bio, I did do chem. I should have done physics, but I didn't want to because it was just that many more classes. And I didn't even want to do pure math. So actually I just did the applied math, or the -2. It's called all kinds of different things now, which also really narrowed down my options for universities actually to one school, which was Mount Royal. So I put all my eggs in one basket, and was fortunate that the upgrades went really well. I smashed bio, which I just kind of blew myself away because I never, again, always told myself that I wasn't a good learner, and ended up doing quite well in the upgrades. Got into Mount Royal. First 2 years, didn't go so well either. It was a big learning curve for me because I had been at a school for about 3 or 4 years at that point, and I didn't really know what I wanted to do. It was more third, and just to give some context, my undergrad took me 7 years to complete. So this was like year 3 or 4. I started getting into these practicums and getting sort of hurting my back and all this stuff like that, and sort of started to gear towards like, okay, this rehab field is starting to look pretty cool here. So I was in no rush. I had already started late. I mean, sometimes I told myself that I should be rushing more, but to those of you who are taking your time, you can still get there. You might not be, where you want to be when you want to be, but I'm getting there. So, everybody in their own time. And I think that's important to remember, to try not to compare yourself to other people, because it's always going to be disappointing. So it's just not worth it. Everybody's on their own path. And then I was working and schooling, and that's why it took so long. I was usually working full time, either as a lifeguard or, like I said, I worked at Walmart for a while, did the construction, eventually got the job at the clinic. And I just picked my way through, and I eventually decided on it. And I was really meticulous about how I was going to go about that at that point. And really at that point, I had no idea what I was doing, but I had some experience in the field, and I kind of came up with some things that I thought would be helpful to get me in. And so this is some of the elective classes that I took, again, taking that practicum really seriously, and like seeking that experience in the field, because I wanted to know. I had tried enough things at this point in time with the lifeguarding and the construction, and I'd been in sales and worked at farms and stuff like that, and I'd done all this stuff, and I wasn't about to go in on something that I didn't have some experience with, because it just wasn't. I felt at this point I didn't have time to waste either, because I was getting older at that point. Some people would laugh at the age that I was at saying that, but I wanted to make sure that I was getting into something that was going to fit me, and that was going to be more so like a forever thing. So through school, I made a I really focused on taking classes that I thought, so things like psychology classes and speech classes, and we can get into that maybe later. But also, and so I've been on a bit of a podcast smash the last 2 days. I've been trying to listen. So I managed to listen to the first 3 podcasts. So I know year 3 stories. Cash, I was hoping Cash was going to be here. I was going to drop this. I thought it was a great one-liner. I was going to say, I'm in the Valley of the Queens, like the Valley of the Kings, because all 3 of you, anyways, it's pretty lame now. Cash was supposed to be here for it, so you can pass that on to him. But I was kind of the only one not from Queens. But I just heard you guys talking about, the importance of trying to build relationships. I think, Anthony, you were talking about building relationships with profs, and luckily this came naturally for me. And I know that this doesn't for a lot of other people, and it's really difficult. And I think it's for people that are listening, that are wanting to get into, not even physio, it doesn't matter. Anything where you need some sort of academic reference, it's really important to start creating those relationships with profs. And don't just do it because you have to. Ideally, find a prof that you can mesh with, so that it's worth your time and you actually are going to get something out of it. And I was fortunate to have at least 2-3 different profs that I got along really, really well with. One that I actually I hang out with. We go rock climbing. We used to drink yerba mate and eat dark chocolate together all the time. I would go visit her in her office, and we would just drink mate and chat and drink chocolate and stuff. So unknowingly creating these relationships before I even knew I needed them was another thing as well too. And then also some volunteering experience that I started to seek out as well. And we can get into some of that stuff later as well too. And yeah, it just kind of it all funneled in. It all sort of ended up lining up. And I started doing my research, and I looked into the profession, and had some guidance from Reed at the time. And this is sort of, I guess, when physio school came into my life as well too. Maybe a little bit afterwards, a couple years after, but I had done a lot of research, so I knew that it was what I wanted to do, and I had even like written some personal statements up and stuff like that, and I was kind of on my way, but I wasn't sure exactly how to approach the whole application process, but I knew that it was what I wanted to do.
I think that's awesome, man. And for a number of reasons. Like, first of all, thank you for sharing all that, because it's so important for people to hear. Just that, you don't need to follow that trajectory that Anthony and I particularly went on. It doesn't have to be high school, undergrad, straight to your master's, and then bada boom, bada bing, you're all done. There's a number of different ways you can get to that end point. But also importantly, it's good to know that you don't have to actually finish grade 9 to get into physio school as well. So I'm
Grade 9
kidding.
is the moral of the story.
You probably do need grade 9. But no, that was awesome. And I wanted to probe just a little bit deeper about more of those, not so much not physio related, but what about like some clinic or like hospital experiences, or those physio related experiences that you've had, as since you've listened to a few episodes as well. Like, that's a question that we like to bring up because it's important for people to kind of get an idea of how they can, work towards their application.
Yeah, absolutely. So, and don't make the decision without experience would be something that I would say. Plus, if you're going to make the decision anyways, you're going to need the experience. So just do it. Seek it out early. I didn't want to bring this up, but I guess I kind of have to. But, during the pandemic, it made it difficult for people to get a volunteering experience. So get it sooner than later, so at least you have it. A lot of the schools want the experience to be within the last 2 to 3 years. I think 5 years was what I remember being sort of the longest that they wanted with regards to timeframes of you doing the volunteering work. But try it out first and foremost, because it might not be what you want. There's lots of people that get in and try it and it's just not for them, and that's totally cool. But you really don't want to go into anything blind, especially not a career, and especially not a career that's going to take as much work on your behalf to get in. So it's not something you want to do lightly. But I was fortunate enough to come across a neuro and spinal cord rehab clinic called Synaptic that has pretty close ties with Mount Royal. There's a lot of students that do their practicums through there. And it's a wicked cool spot. So like, shout out to Synaptic if anyone hears it on it, but it's actually a non-for-profit. They do have a clinic that's attached to them. So the actual Synaptic aspect of it is a non-for-profit, but they are funded by different benefactors, as well as the private clinic that is attached to them, which helps to support them as well too. So I got a lot of experience. Well, I wouldn't say a lot. I think I was at about 40 or 50 hours before the pandemic hit, and I got the boot because they just couldn't have the extra hands in the space at that time, which was really disappointing for me because I really enjoyed my time there. You're just working with they're amazing population. It really is. Like, just the resiliency in people and overcoming these different life-changing situations, be it a trauma or just some sort of disease or disorder that comes up or that was always there, and just their attitudes and working with them and seeing the gains. And a lot of the times it's a lot slower gains than what you're used to in sort of a rehab or sort of strength training progress, but it was so rewarding to do that. And the experience was great too, because a lot of people don't have that exposure to neuro. Even myself, it's like, if you would have asked me 2 years ago, MSK was what physios did. Just, as a general statement from my knowledge. So it was cool to get that experience. The other thing, again, was the clinic in Okotoks, doing the placement there. You're not supposed to do both of your practicums at the same place, but I silver-tongued my way with our academic advisor and told her about how I would be doing all these different tasks for the clinic, which it wasn't entirely true actually, but I did do a couple little side projects. I actually ended up doing the same thing I was always doing, which was kind of the PTA thing. But then I built I redid our ordering for all the clinical supplies, as well as wrote a bunch of blogs that I think never got used actually. So yeah, but I ended up it was supposed to be a 250-hour practicum. I probably worked over 250 hours for him and then easily put 50 to 100 hours into the revamping of the ordering and the blogs. So I ended up probably doing more work than you would normally do on the placement. But I know a lot of people who went and did, volunteering somewhere where they just could get the experience. They knew it was easy, or it was like with an old teacher that they knew and they didn't have to do anything. And the teacher just wrote off on them, A plus, 10 out of 10 for them being at the placement, which I just think was depending on what you wanted to get into, was a waste of your practicum. And I just think that if you have the opportunity to do stuff like that, and if you want to try physio or whatever else it is that you want to try, go and get a practicum, get a placement in whatever you want to do, because it's such a great opportunity to expose yourself to something new, to see if you are going to like it or not. So yeah, synaptic momentum. And then the last thing was probably, and this isn't really my personal experience, I just was a part of it, but my mom had heart surgery in 2019. And thankfully it was months before the pandemic kind of kicked off. And it was an elective surgery. It was not anything that needed to be done urgently. It was this really weird nobody can explain why she had it. Basically, for the anatomy buffs out there, you'll understand this, but the chordinae, tendonae on her mitral valve, some of them snapped off essentially. And my mom's super healthy. Reed could, vouch for that. She takes her health very, very seriously. And like I said, nobody could tell her why this had happened. So they ended up wanting to do heart surgery for her. So this was a wild time for me. This is in my second last year of university. I was taking this course, which again, I would come back to and maybe talk about a little bit more later, because it's one of the courses I think was really integral to my performance over the last semester of school. But I was getting ready for this MSK, like clinical MSK anatomy final. And it was the next day. And my mom was supposed to go for heart surgery the day before the exam. And I remember getting the call that there was an emergency and the surgeon had to do an emergency heart surgery, and that she was going to get bumped to tomorrow. So now she was having surgery on the same day as my anatomy final. And I remember I was a mess. I went and wrote this exam. I don't remember what day it was. I think it was maybe the 19th or something. And wrote the exam in the morning and then drove to the hospital right after the exam. And my mom had just gone in for surgery. So it was a whirlwind. But moral of the story was I got to see her go through the cardio resp physio. So at this point now, I had gotten a lot of exposure. I'd gotten some neuro exposure. I had seen the MSK stuff, and I had seen even like some vestibular stuff as well too, like at the private clinic in Okotoks as well too. So I sort of was like seeing like, oh, like physio is not just this MSK focused thing. Like there's, vestibular issues that they can work on. They're in hospitals working with post-op, cardiac patients and stuff like that. And then of course the spinal cord and the neuro stuff. So MS, cerebral palsy, stroke, all this stuff like that. And so started to really see how broad the scope of practice was for physio, which just kind of like got me more excited for it. I also have difficulty with like staying focused on something for a long time. I like to like switch things up. I mean, that's what I have issues with, like my own working out. I have trouble sticking with the same workout regime for long periods of time. I like to like switch it up. So it again kind of like got me excited that there was so many different options, because again, I always saw myself in sort of private practice, MSK. That was what I was most exposed to. But then seeing all of this other stuff that physios are a part of was just really, really cool. So those were probably the three big experiences for me that were physio related. There's one other one that was less physio related, but it was a volunteer experience that I took with a prof, which I also think was really, really important. And it was mostly biomechanics based. We were looking at kinematics of skating on a slide board. It was basically like puck board with two barriers or gutters on the side, and you would wear these like slippers and you would slide, and it would mimic skating. And essentially it was to test if it was similar to what would be the gold standard of like a skating treadmill test. If you guys ever seen those the super wide treadmills, and they actually go laterally as well too.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was really cool. I got the opportunity to help with data analysis of this, and it got me sort of exposed to research, which wasn't, again, so physio related, but it was still movement related. And again, kind of got me excited for the sort of sports science aspect of physio and stuff like that as well too. So that was another really important experience for me. Again, not totally physio related, but sort of off as an offshoot.
I think you absolutely nailed it, man. You know, you have all three areas of practice or the main three areas of practice that you covered prior to even going into physio school, right? You got your neuro, you got your cardio resp, you got your MSK, and a lot of applicants don't actually do that, right? And that's probably what separated you from the bunch. And that's why you did so well during your application cycle last year, right? And research to boot as well. So you really got that exposure. And I know earlier you talked about having the one liner about being in the Valley of the Queens. I think your one liner here was, don't make a decision until you have experience. That's an absolute killer quote, because you know how it is right now, right? You've only been through first semester, but you already know that this profession and just going through school, it's going to test you, right? So you really got to love it, and you really got to make sure that you made the right decision for yourself, because you don't want to commit to something that, you know, you're not going to end up liking in the end. You know, sometimes it happens, right? Even with an informed career decision, but you know, I think you did your due diligence, which I think is really good. But going back, I know you were talking a little bit about classes earlier. So what type of classes did you take during undergrad that were kind of a little bit different but helpful for you in preparing for physio school? And this could be the, you know, outside of the prereqs that you took.
Yeah, and they are. So now I look back, and I would say, fortunately, when I was going to Mount Royal, I hated it. So Mount Royal does a lot of
No
what we call,
shame.
This guy's an academic over here.
Pardon me.
This guy's an academic over here.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you guys can start with this. You had electives that you did in your undergrad, right? Now, did you have general education courses?
Not
No.
that I remember.
You had these things called gen eds, and it was 12 classes. So of the whole program, and what's a full program? I don't even know. Anyways,
Depends on the credit system.
totally.
Yeah.
Anyways, 12 of these classes had to be from these gen ed classes. And so what it was is it was 4 different clusters that went 3 tiers. And you had to take each of the clusters up 3 tiers. So you could choose a class within a cluster, like it would be like, you know, mathematics, or it'd be science, or like social sciences, or it'd be like English, or sort of these general faculties. And you had to take a class, and then you had to take it to the 300 level, or 3000 level, whatever your school is, however they kind of course code your classes. And so I ended up taking writing about images. It's the only W I have on my transcript. because everyone told me this is an easy class. And so this is another takeaway that I'd like to give people. But don't take classes because they're easy classes. Take classes that are going to set you up to do better in whatever you think you want to do in the future. Writing about images was not one of those things that was going to do that. And I ended up bombing the first few assignments and withdrew from it because of it. And it's one of the reasons that the schooling took me 7 years to do, because I had these hiccups like this. Anyways, moral of the story was take classes that I thought was going to help. And so for me, with the little knowledge that I had, I thought that psychology and public speaking were two things that I thought that I would try to focus on that would be helpful for me trying to get into physiotherapy. And so the reason behind that was I wanted to know what people were thinking, why they thought it, and how they came to believe what they thought, their beliefs and values, essentially, which psych was awesome for that. I took a behavioral neuroscience class, which was one of the coolest classes I've ever taken. Unfortunately, I did it in a spring semester, and it was really, really intense. It was super, super fast paced, but I had just finished a motor behavior class, and like two of the parts of the class were like sensory and motor. And so I was like, oh, I know this already. Like I just did a whole class that was dedicated to this. But getting the sort of the cognition behind it, and like, you know, why we do the things that we do, and how you build different beliefs and values was, I think, super valuable going forward. And now looking back, it's just invaluable, because I like to think I have a better grasp on, or just a better understanding of why people think differently than I do. And it allows me to kind of pull myself out of my own beliefs and values, challenge my own beliefs, and to kind of put myself into other people's shoes. So I thought that the psychology stuff was really, really helpful with understanding human behavior a little bit better. The second thing would be speech. And if you asked, well, Reed would probably attribute, but definitely my girlfriend or my mom, like I'm pretty good at talking. Not always about things, but I'm like really good at speaking. So I knew that as a physio, I was going to be in front of people. And I know people think public speaking and they think, oh, a big crowd and I'm talking to a large group of people, but it's not about that. Public speaking is as much one-on-one as it is one on 1,000, whatever it is. It makes no difference. And it's not always like all about speaking. So you learn a lot about body language. You learn a lot about your body language and how to either open yourself up or close yourself off, or, you know, how to exude confidence, even if you don't feel confident and stuff like that. And learning to talk and learning to utilize these different tactics with speech was huge for me, especially in the interview process. And now going through some of these like mini OSCE tests that I've done now, you just become really comfortable talking in front of people, and it takes the edge off of a lot of stuff. So those were, like, I did for the psych stuff, I did the behavioral neuro and a lifespan development. And again, you guys both know the importance of lifespan development in the realm of physio, because we get to treat everybody from birth to grave. So it's pretty cool. And again, something that's exciting because it's not focused on a specific population. And then the other one was just an intro to public speaking, but the cooler one was a persuasive speech class. And the reason it was so interesting was because it wasn't about me making you think what I wanted you to. It was about me planting seeds so that, and giving you the information that you would hopefully then come to the decision on your own, which I think we all know is a far more powerful way to take an action. Because if somebody tells you to take an action, you might do it, but if you're doing it for somebody else, it's just not as powerful. But when you come, you're like, oh, like here's all this information I've been given. Oh, like, wow, okay, I can see how this adds up and can lead to this. I think this is the best action for me. And that was the whole point of the class. It wasn't about persuading people to do what you wanted to do. It was about giving them the information and hoping that they came to the right decision. And that was the persuasion in itself, but it was just this different approach. I guess motivational interviewing would be another way to probably title the class, to be honest with you. So I did another one called The Art of the Pitch, which was more of an entrepreneurship class, but it was also interesting because it was like you had to get your point across in like a minute, sometimes like an elevator pitch. And although it was my sign language class, because it brought me down. If anyone's listened to the episode 3, you'll know about the sign language class, and it was the one that dragged my GPA down. And I was this close to getting it. It was the last class. It was like 19 or 20 of 20 classes of my last 20 classes. And I almost got rid of it, but I just didn't. And it was the one class that pulled my GPA down. But again, super valuable, having the skills to get my opinion across in a short period of time. Again, especially in something like an MMI or Cure Talent, or even the Casper, even though it's mostly written, right? It was like being able to sell myself or my idea in a short period of time was really valuable for the whole application process.
There are so many gems within what you just said. I encourage everyone to, pause the podcast right now, rewind 8 minutes and listen to that again. Because seriously, from, just taking classes that, you not are only going to just get a good grade in, but you will enjoy, and then also will set you up for success in the future. Speaking from experience as well, like those are the courses you do the best in. And I made that mistake along the way, hence why I have ancient Egyptian civilization, classics 2500A on my transcript as well from undergrad. Didn't care at all, but just tried to get a good grade in it. But it's not as fulfilling as some of those experiences that you just spoke about, Jon. So that's great. We have 2 more questions that we want to go through, and then we'll wrap things up for this pod. But you're half a year now. You're a full semester into physio school. And obviously this could be a big question, but I was hoping you could just sort of go through some of like the highlights, lowlights, just share your experience of PT school so far. A lot of our listeners are trying to get to the point that you're at right now. And it'd be great to hear, how your experience has been.
So I think I have been really fortunate with my experience. It's been difficult for everybody, so I'm not going to say mine's any more difficult than anybody else's throughout the pandemic, but things are they're flip-flopping, and people are scared, and you're trying to do all this hands-on stuff, right? Physical therapy is just a hands-on profession, and you're trying to navigate doing these labs and stuff. And fortunately for us, zero transmission, knock on wood. We've done really, really well. Everyone is very respectful, but it's been difficult, just because you're trying to make the right decisions, but you're also trying to get together with your classmates to study and stuff like that. So, but besides that, the reason I say I was so fortunate is that I have such a wicked support group, and this is both classmates and personal. Like, my family is just phenomenally supportive. Here I am in my parents' basement again, living for free. It's a bit of a commute. I drive about 45 minutes to get to school, so it's a good hour and a half, 2 hours of driving every day to get to and from school. But they've always had my back, and I just shout out. I would love to say everybody's name, but I know we're coming up on time here, but I will just give a shout out to my Discord group. And if there's any gamers out there, they'll know what Discord is. And if you aren't, then it's basically just a chat room app, essentially, for streaming and screen sharing and stuff like that. And actually, it's taken off so much that they actually offer deals to schools that sign up with them now. But we just had one of my friends set it up early on. A couple of us, probably 15 or 20 of us, really sort of latched onto it, and it's just been phenomenal. I've had the most supportive group. Everyone's got each other's backs. We're online every night studying, quizzing each other. And again, we're in the pandemic, so it's, you know, it's over the screen most of the time, but it's accountability more than anything. And so I think one of the reasons that this semester, block one, has gone so well for me is the support. I would have never done as well as I did without the support. And I think a lot of people in the group would say the same thing. So I guess some advice would be, you know, find a really good study group and just like latch on and spend time with each other and talk about things and discuss things, because people just understand things differently. They have different analogies. They have different ways of explaining different theories and topics, and it's so valuable to hear it from other directions. Sometimes it makes you more confused. Other times it'll lock it in your head and you're writing the test and that person just starts talking in your head and that's the answer. And that's when, you know, they taught you that. So I think my experience has been so good because of how supportive everybody is. I'm in Calgary also, by the way, for those of you who don't know. The University of Alberta has a satellite campus at a downtown campus in Calgary. So there's 68 students in Edmonton and there's 24 students in Calgary. And so we have a pretty tight knit group in Calgary, which is really, really fun as well too. It kind of feels like elementary school all over again, like, you know, class size that's smaller than 30. That just doesn't happen anymore. So that's been really cool as well. But it's hard. It's really, really hard. I hate to say that. I don't want to discourage anybody because of that, but I also want to like forewarn you. It's not like undergrad anymore. It's a whole new ball game, especially for someone like me who only ever took 3 classes a semester and was working. You know, I had long days. I was working 12, 14-hour days between school and work, but it was never content for like 12 to 14 hours a day. It's like sitting in class for, you know, 6 hours a day sometimes, and then studying for another like 6 to 10 hours some days. And it's a lot, but you're doing what you love if you're there for the right reason, and it's worth it. But read, you know, Steven, our boss, a friend of mine, Will Nicholson, shout out to the Movement PT podcast, all told me like it's really, really hard. And I was like, I pumped it up, I built it up in my head leading up to it, and it was still so much harder than I ever could have thought it was. And I don't know if the schooling's hard or if it's the balancing life in school or if it's because I'm trying to do this during a pandemic, and we can create, I'm great at excuses. So we can go on all day about that, but it's hard and you have to work hard. And that's why it's so important to have that support, both academically, but socially as well. And I've been really fortunate to have both of that throughout. And then just the experience, like, you know, the schooling, you know, the book learning aspect of it, it's not always what you want to do. You're learning stuff that you don't maybe feel is that valuable, or you're just not that interested in. And that's okay. And you know what? You might not do as well on that stuff. And that's also okay. You just have to pass. And I'm still trying to learn that. I've been told by so many people that you just have to pass, and I can't. I'm so stuck in that underground mindset of like, I need that GPA, so I just need to go harder and harder and harder. And I don't. I need to understand what I'm doing, and I need to pass everything. And so I'm starting to get there, I think. But forewarned, it's hard, and it's hard to get over. So it's something that you should be aware of going into the program. But then once you get on placement, and that's been sort of, you're burnt out. And then I went on placement last week. And even a few weeks ago, I had the opportunity to be at the Peter Lougheed Center in Northeast Calgary. And I got placed in the ICU. And at the time, you know, this is a whole other story about my background with COVID and vaccines and stuff like that. But long story short, I was very hesitant with the whole thing. And I had had to get the shot to stay in the program. So I had one shot at the time, and I was going to the Peter Lougheed, and I was going in the ICU. And I had been told that students weren't allowed in the ICU, especially on this shadow placement. That was just like a no-no. It wasn't supposed to happen. And here I am. They're like, we're going to put you in the ICU. And I'm like, my stomach drops. I'm like almost like sweating a little bit. And then I was like, what a great opportunity for me to see the inside, because I've heard all this stuff on the news and the media, and I've heard from this side and I've heard from that side, and I don't know what to believe anymore. And I was like, I would like to see this if you guys are willing to allow me to. Like, if you're comfortable with this, I'm comfortable with this. And I don't think they were comfortable with it, but they said yes anyways. And so I got to witness it. And so seeing that side, if you've never been in an ICU before, it's shocking. It really is. If you've never seen it before, it's nothing like you've ever seen. I had a little bit of experience before with my mom because she was intubated after the heart surgery, and I got to see her after that, which actually just brought back a whole lot of emotions. I was like almost crying in one of the rooms that I went into because, just it brought back all these feelings with my mom and stuff like that. But it was just like, whoa, like physios are in this realm as well too, in this like acute care setting as well too, which is something that I hadn't experienced to that point, besides that little bit with my mom. And then just this previous placement, again, it lights a fire under your ass when you see what you will get to do. And I got to see wicked cool stuff on my placement. I was talking to Reed, and it was not a wings topic, but here we were sitting for wings, and I'm talking about wounds care. I never even knew. Ask me a week and a half ago, I had no idea physios did wound care. That was not something that I knew existed. And we don't need to get into details of that, just in case there's some squeamish listeners. But really important work. You have no idea how important it is. Wounds get out of control faster than you can imagine too. And it was shocking to see what the physio's scope was there. Like this one physio there, she's this legend, and she's actually advocated so hard for PTs that she actually can administer lidocaine when she's working on these wounds if they're too sensitive and stuff. And so because of her, you can actually, as a physio, get certified to administer lidocaine in a situation with wounds care. And then one more experience I'll talk about is this gentleman who had a stroke. And this reminded me of my grandpa a little bit, and I think that's why it hit home. But just these placements, they kind of, you get burnt out and you're tired and you're learning all this stuff, and it moves so fast. Sometimes you wonder if you're learning anything because it moves so fast. But when you get into practicing and things the picture kind of starts to come back together. And anyways, we had this gentleman, and we got this guy standing post-stroke. And unfortunately, he's about 6 weeks out. And so a lot of times you get most of your recovery in the first month with a stroke. But he was working really hard, and he was trying so hard, and we got him standing up. And we sat him down. We did 3 cycles of a sit to stand, and we stood for about 30 seconds to a minute each time. And the second time he stood up, he started to tear up while he was standing there. So I'm like crying now. The physio's like, "You're gonna make me cry," and he's so joyful to be standing again. And I got to be a part of that. I gotta help stabilize him. I was holding the chair to make sure that he didn't pull it up on himself. And it's just, that's why you're there. And so when you get down in the dumps and you're struggling through your undergrad, or you're struggling through your first block or second block or whatever it is, like, it's those moments that you got to kind of like call back on to remember, like, this is why I do this. This is why I'm here. And it's just, I'm here doing what I love, and it was hard to get here, and that makes it even better. So
well put.
Block 1 has been wild, but it's been amazing. So
yeah, seriously, 100% well put. I think the key thing to highlight there is exactly what you mentioned, those intermittent clinical exposures throughout the 2.5 years in physio school. That is what reignites that fire under you, right? Because like you mentioned, I'm not even going to add anything to what you said. It is hard. right? It's hard going through it, and you do get burnt out, right? You have the support, but it happens. It just is what it is. But having experiences like the ones that you just mentioned just really reinvigorates you, right? I know, Reed, you can probably speak to it too. Like just getting back into a semester after a clinical placement, you just feel like the batteries are recharged, right? And I know you're probably going to experience that as well, John, when you head back. So I think that's super important for listeners going through it right now to know about, and for people who are going to be going through it in the future, just remember that. So last question here. So Reed and I and Cash, we've been working on this physioschool.ca project for a while now, right? We're coming up on like a year and a half. And the first year, we kind of did it behind the scenes a little bit just to get that proof of concept out there. And you were actually one of the first to go through our programs, right? PT application booster and the PT interviews booster. So for people who are listening who may be contemplating doing one of our courses or using any of our resources, could you maybe give them some insight on your experience and how that was, and how it helped you eventually get to PT school?
Don't contemplate, just do it first and foremost. But I think I've already sold at least one or two people on it now at this point. But I did a lot of research. I did a lot of research before ever coming. I mean, I think even before I met Reed, I had gone to all the different schools, and I was similar to, I think, Reed's story, where I didn't think I had a great GPA, just because this like 4.0 was so readily passed around regarding physio school. I had a good GPA, but I just didn't think it was that good. So I did all my research. I read through all the schools. I applied to 5 schools: Mac, U of T, Queens, Western, U of A, Dal, 6. I was gonna apply to McGill until they brought in the French language proficiency aspect, so I crossed that off my list. But I had read through all these schools' websites. I had been through the Physiotherapy Canada website, the core competencies, the skills and attributes, and I knew I knew a lot. I really did, and I wondered how much the program could offer. And some of it was a little bit repeat, but there was so much more deeper information, and it almost came more from the experience and the understanding. And anyone who's done it, it is a pain in the ass to try and sift through those schools' websites. Like, it is not like click here to get, like, you have to find everything. You have to find everything. And sometimes the web pages don't load, or they're not even there anymore. Like, it's just like things just go wrong the whole time along the way. And every school is different. Every school focuses on different competencies and different values, and they have a different interview process. And some want a Casper and some don't, and some want a personal statement and some don't, and some want volunteer experience. And it's really, really difficult to sift through it all and to know exactly where you're supposed to be at with each of the program applications. And so that's where Physio School came in. And it was just, here's the information for McMaster. You need to take the Casper, and if you get through that with your GPA, you're taking the Kira Talent. And this stuff changes year to year as well, too. So that's the other thing. So don't take anything that I say to heart, because go and research it yourself or enroll in the program, because you're going to have to learn it again, because it changes year to year. And they're constantly trying to make it better. There's so much feedback from the professors in the program now to us that are like, how can we make the application process more accepting to different, like more diverse and stuff like that as well too. And so this stuff is constantly under heavy scrutiny, and it's changing all the time. And so Physio School just really got into the nitty gritty. I had this surface information. I knew a lot of the stuff, but I didn't know how to utilize that information as well either, which was another thing. So again, writing personal statements, I kind of was saying everything that I needed to say, but I wasn't, what's the word, relating it to what they were looking for. And that was the gap that physio school bridged for me. I had my personal statements written up, but again, you guys helped me to really hone in on the specific experiences that I had that were valuable and how I was going to relate that to the profession and be like, this is why you should choose me, because I've done this stuff and it's helped me cultivate this skill. And it's so important to do that because that's what sets you out from other applicants. It's so easy to go and read the physiotherapy competencies and say, I am professional and I have management skills and I can communicate well. But they don't care if you can list a bunch of competencies. They want to know how your life and the experiences that you've had have directed you and cultivated these different things in you. And if they haven't, are you aware of it and how can you be better at that in the future? And so I think, especially the application booster, I guess I'm mostly talking about the application booster here now, was again invaluable in that sense. Now, as for the interview stuff, again, I pride myself on my public speaking abilities, and I'd been in the clinic and I'd talk with people, and I've had interviews over the years and stuff like that. And, I was like, I wasn't too worried about that, but I didn't have the tools to practice and I didn't know how to practice. And so the practice tests and the questions and stuff were, again, so valuable for me. Again, it's what you do with them as well too. So, shout out to my girlfriend, Nicole, and also my mom, but mostly Nicole, because she listened to more practice interviews than she would probably like to admit. And I remember actually the day before my MMI for U of A, she came over to do a practice exam with me, one of the exams that you guys had written. And this wasn't even the real thing. And I remember right before I pressed start to do the timer for the thing, I just broke down and just started crying, just full on weeping. And I mean, I'm glad it happened the night before and not the day of the actual interview. But there's a lot of stress, and especially depending on who you are, like there's a lot weighing on this. Like for me, this is close to 10 years of cultivation to try and be where I'm at. And this was the last. I had made it through the GPA loop, the gate, and I that's where I thought I was going to fail if I was going to, was the GPA. Wasn't going to get in because of that. So I'd been through that, and now it was the interview, and everything was hanging on this interview. And it's stressful. It really is. But if you have a good team and you've got people supporting you, and more importantly, you've put in the work, you've put in the practice. Reed also did some practice interviews with me as well too. And so thank you for that. But again, you can take the course, but don't take the course if you're not serious. And if you're not going to put the work in, because just don't waste these guys' times and don't waste your own time, because it's just not worth it. So like, you got to, again, get the experience, be serious. You really want to be serious about this, because it's not easy to get in, and it's a lot of work and it's a lot of stress, and it's not worth putting yourself through that if you're not serious about it. And so again, you guys just kind of helped me be more serious, fine tune everything. I remember writing my personal statement, and I thought it was so good. I was like, yes, dude, like, look at me go. I bragged about myself, which I'm, I like to say I'm not good at, but I'm probably better at it than I think I am. But I remember getting it back from Anthony, and the whole thing was highlighted. And I was like gutted. I was just absolutely gutted, because I thought I had done such a good job, but I had basically done what I just told you not to do, which was list these things. I'm a great leader, but why are you a great leader? Tell me why. And I hadn't done that. And so that's the stuff that you guys challenged me and helped guide me, sort of refining my my statements for that stuff. And that was just, again, it was just invaluable. So, and you guys, I know courses that are like MMI prep specific, and they're a hell of a lot more expensive than what you guys charge. So it's just, it's worth every penny, which I think is in my little write-up that you guys put on the website as well too. So
Yeah, thank you, Jon. That's awesome, man.
Yeah, no, that's unreal. Great feedback for us, and I hope people hear that for sure, because this is a real success story right in front of you. But awesome, man. Honestly, really appreciate your insight, your story. It just speaks to your perseverance and just will to get to physio school. Before we wrap up, Reed, you got any last minute questions for Jon, or I think we're good to go?
None for me. I'm good to go. But just once again, thank you so much for taking time out of your vacation between semesters here. It's like I said, you dropped a lot of knowledge bombs on everyone tonight. So I hope that everyone can take at least something from your experience. And to be honest, I know everyone will take at least something. So thank you.
No, I appreciate it. It's just, I tell myself this, and it's hard, but it's just you just never give up on yourself, because I would have gave up on myself back in high school and never would have even upgraded. And there were so many crossroads. And I remember getting into university and my mom was laughing, because she was just like, there's no way that you're here now, and other people as well too. And then now, doing my master's, and again, it's like this, it's comedy for my mom, because I was a shithead as a kid, and I did not do well in high school, and she tried so hard to gear me towards it. And it's just everyone on their own time, and just don't give up on yourself. And if you want something bad enough, you really can do it. And I can't even tell you how many times I doubted myself, and Reed knows, he heard about it multiple times leading up and throughout. But I guess if I'm here now, if you put the work in, you can make it happen. So
Proof of that, man.
Yeah. Living proof.
Yeah, man. From grade 9 to here. I love it.
Exactly.
All right, guys. Really
Thank you guys
appreciate
so much for having me. I this is my inaugural podcast. This has been a dream of mine. So I want to thank you guys for inviting me on, but also thank you guys for all the help. I still owe you guys a drink or a dinner or something, because I don't know if I would be here without you guys. So I appreciate both of you a lot. And
Thanks
Cash,
so much,
you're listening, Cash. I know I haven't met you yet, but I know you had you designed this stuff as well too. So we'll be talking. Give me 2 years, and we'll be talking about the national exams, and I'll be paying Cash here too as well.
Talking shop there for sure.
Yeah,
no, awesome, man. Really appreciate that. Really appreciate you coming on, and really appreciate you, listeners. So if you want to keep listening to episodes like this, please consider subscribing. Please consider leaving a 5-star review. Really helps us to put out the best possible content for you guys. So definitely consider that. And then if you want to chat with us, reach out to us. We're on pretty much every social media platform. Just go on our show notes and you can reach out to us from there. All right, guys, we will see you at the next episode.